afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope you are avoiding the snowflakes and your weekend is off to a great start. Thanks for joining us. Plenty to get talking about as far as the Browns a little later in the show. Sam Amico from hoopswire.com will join us. We'll talk some Cavs. Some news from the Browns relative to the NFL today. Mary Kay Cabot tweeting out, Wyatt Teller and JOK have been named to the Pro Bowl. They were alternates. Teller replacing Joel Bitonio, JOK replacing TJ Watt, both kind of banged up, will not go. Of course, there is no Pro Bowl game anymore, so JOK will probably be really good in dodgeball as well as the obstacle course. But again, the honor of being named to the Pro Bowl goes to both Wyatt Teller and JOK. The big news, Browns in the market for an offensive coordinator after they let go of Alex Van Pelt. This from BrownsWire.com gives us some names to keep an eye out for. They go with Titans offensive coordinator Tim Kelly. Kelly was also quarterbacks coach, called plays for the Texans in 2019 and 2020. So he has knowledge of Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson has played in a system that he has called plays for and has been effective. Also, Rams quarterback coach, passing game coordinator Zach Robinson. That from the Sean McVay tree. And again, you know, you get that motion, and that's kind of the new age of the NFL. Also on this list, Dolphins pass game quarter Darrell Bevell. So spent some time with Mike McDaniel, Tua, coordinating the pass game. Does have a history with Kevin Stefanski back to their days in Minnesota with the Vikings. Colts quarterback coach Cam Turner, the young guy. He is Norv Turner's son. Shane Steichen, that offensive genre. So Cam Turner, interesting guy. Remember, Norv Turner has a relationship with Kevin Stefanski going back to the Vikings as well. Seahawks offensive coordinator Shane Waldron. Will be interesting to see how that plays out. Remember, the Browns have also talked to the offensive line coach, Andy Dickinson, for Seattle, relative to the offensive coordinator's position as well. And also Texans quarterback coach, Jared Johnson, again, a younger guy. They like what they have seen in Bobby Slowick's offense with C.J. Stroud. The goal of a new offensive coordinator is for Kevin Stefanski to unlock what they believed was the potential for Deshaun Watson when they traded all the draft capital, paid him the $230 million guaranteed. Obviously, the need for them to get more out of the quarterback in Deshaun Watson, the reason you go looking for a new offensive coordinator. This one from the Bleacher Report, ranking the most desirable offensive coordinator openings that are out there. They have the Bears number one because they can pretty much go out and get their own quarterback. Lions would be number 2 if Ben Johnson gets head coaching job. Eagles 3, Patriots 4, Browns number 5. Why it's vacant. Somewhat surprisingly, the Browns fired Alex Van Pelt after their offense ranked 10th in scoring, 23.3 points per game, despite not having Deshaun Watson for a chunk of the 23 campaign. Why it's desirable. Kevin Stefanski isn't likely to relinquish play calling duties. The chance to work with Watson with considerable support has got to be tempting. The Browns should contend in 2024 and beyond. Again, this from Bleacher Report. Why Tim Kelly is the man for the job. He was in Houston with Watson during the quarterback's peak. Still only 37, and there's plenty of room for him to grow regardless of whether he has the chance to call plays or not. I would say I don't think play calling is off the table. I don't think Kevin Stefanski is excited to necessarily let somebody else have play calling, but I truly believe if Kevin Stefanski feels it will make the offense better, there is enough riding on Deshaun Watson and maximizing his talents for the Browns moving forward, that if somebody makes that a deal breaker and Stefanski feels like this guy can unlock it, he will relinquish play calling duties. this is a really interesting graph. When we look at this, it shows you how often quarterbacks scrambled this season and their EPAs on those plays. So x-axis, so that's going across, is the true scramble rate. The y-axis is the true scramble EPA. And what we see is Joe Flacco scrambled less and had a higher EPA. Flacco kind of near the left side of the screen, up near the top. Again, you want to be up and down is the EPA, the expected passes, is the expected yards per play. Watson is almost all the way to the right, so scramble more, didn't have as much success. Kind of the inverse of what you think might have happened. Flacco, not mobile, but higher EPA when he did scramble. Watson scrambled a lot, didn't get as high of an EPA as you would like. All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for the first time today.
Browns made the wrong move in getting rid of Stump Mitchell and their tight end. It wasn't their fault. When you win 11 games, I don't think too many changes need to be made as far as your coaches. They're doing what they're supposed to do. It was a collapse. That blame should have been put on the coach, who was also doubling as the offensive coordinator by calling plays, as well as perhaps the defensive coordinator. I don't think there should have been any changes. Stump Mitchell is a great running back coach, no doubt. I mean, you got over 1,600 yards on a run-by-committee running back. I mean, you can't fault that. One of the greatest, arguably, top 3 running backs was out for the season. Deuce Staley is all right if they try to hire him, but Stump Mitchell was the real deal. All right, have a great one.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. I think you're kind of coming at it from the wrong way if you think they got rid of these guys as a blame for what happened in the playoff game. I don't think it has anything to do with the playoffs whatsoever. I think what they're looking at is how do we remake this offense to help Deshaun Watson maximize his skills. So you're probably talking about running more out of the shotgun, spreading it out a little bit more. I have no doubt that Alex Van Pelt, Stump Mitchell, and McCarthy will end up finding jobs reasonably quickly. I just don't think it was the right fit. I think they want a fresh set of eyes. They want a new approach. They don't want what they had the last couple of years. And that's not fair to the running back room because they'd take that for sure. But it's got to be a little bit different. It's going to look a little different. And they want a new set of ideas. And I think that's the reason that they ended up moving from Van Pelt, Stump Mitchell, and McCarthy as well. All right, before we head to a break, Joe Flacco was on Pardon My Take podcast talking about the potential of returning to the Browns.
Man, Cleveland was unbelievable. I'm definitely open to be back in Cleveland. At the same point, like, I don't want to rush to any decisions either. I mean, I didn't know what the market for QBs was going to look like last spring, and I don't know what it's going to look like this spring. So I don't know if I'm going to have options or if I'm going to have zero options. I love Cleveland though. I love the building, the people, everything about it. I think, it's funny when you go from, when you get to see a few different organizations and then you go to Cleveland and, I don't think people really, I don't think you ever hear too many like, oh man, Cleveland's an awesome organization. And man, they've done this well and done that well. But I can't say enough good things about how that organization is being run right now and the atmosphere in the building and the way that guys feel like their future's headed. So I think it would be a very special place to be if I have the opportunity to go back there.
Again, that Joe Flacco talking about if he would want to be back and what he thought of Cleveland. A really good sign that a guy that's been in the NFL and has been in a number of different buildings, especially the Ravens. That's a really well-run organization. For him to come out, and there's no reason for him to say that because he's probably not coming back to the Browns. He's not closing the door on it, but I think everybody would be a little bit surprised if he's back next year. But for him to say those things about the organization, the building, and the way things are headed out in Berea, It's a good sign that the organization finally has the right people running things, that somebody that has that much NFL experience thinks that highly of the organization. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout, other side of the break. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk a little bit more Browns a little later in the show. Lance Reisland with video analysis, film breakdown, what went wrong in that Texans playoff game. We'll also talk some Cavs with Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Ooh, holiday gold! The $20 scratch-off?
It has 100 times multiplier. I could win $1 million.
Psych! I got merry and bright.
No fair.
It has a 200 times multiplier. I could win $2 million!
Game on the back.
Game on the back. Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, I was just wondering, what was your thoughts about the Browns bringing in Andy Dickerson from the Seahawks? In my honest opinion, I don't have an issue with it. The Seahawks offense is very, very unique in the sense of creativity. It really caters to quarterbacks, whatever they do well, and they basically go off that. And looking at Geno Smith and how he's been able to play these past 2 years under their offensive coordinator, I think if we hire Andy Dickerson, I think he'll be able to carry that over here, what AVP couldn't really necessarily do with Deshaun the last 2 years. So, yeah, I just wanted to see what you guys thought about it. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. I know Andy Dickerson is highly thought of in NFL circles. Shane Waldron, offensive coordinator out in Seattle, and so he's been in that offense, and they do some interesting things. But I think it's more likely that they wanted to get to know Andy Dickerson in the event that Bill Callahan becomes the offensive line coach for wherever his son, Brian Callahan, gets a head coaching job. So I think they wanted, and I'm not saying that there's anything underhanded about it or anything, I think they wanted to get to know Dickerson because they're intrigued by him as a young head coach. But I'm not so sure that would be the way they would go offensive coordinator-wise, that they were talking to him about that job, but if the offensive line position opens up, I think they may go awfully hard over Andy Dickerson. And along those lines, take a look at some of the things with Dickerson. He's been the run game coordinator before getting promoted to the offensive line coach. So under Dickerson, Seahawks were second in rush per EPA, 11th in total rush yards, third in yards per carry, and these two are really important. So these are the explosive ones that you're always looking for in your run game. Tied for second, runs over 20 yards. Tied for second, runs over 40 yards. Now remember, Rashard Penny, Alex Collins, Chris Carson, less than 100%. You had Kenneth Walker as a rookie, Travis Homer. So he's done that and had a successful run game without a really marquee, top 10 kind of guy. Walker's kind of elevating into that status. But that's one of the reasons I wanted to come in and talk to Andy Dickerson. Has a real good feel for how to effectively run the football, as the Seahawks have shown. All right, this one from Dog Pound Daily. 3 remaining difficult questions for the Browns. Number 3, letting Darius Smith walk. Smith was one of the bigger moves from the Vikings when they went and got him. 1-year deal, it was 11 and a half, something like that. The PFF projection on his contract is like 2 years, $25 million. I would think that the Browns would like to get Darius Smith back. I know the sack numbers weren't off the charts. he and Miles seemed to work off of each other well. Pressure numbers were high. That defensive line, I know it didn't end well with the Houston Texans, but was a really good defensive line. It was a strength, and it would be interesting to get him back. All right, along those lines, another one of those 3 difficult decisions. Number 2, drafting another running back. Browns' running game with Nick Chubb was kind of all over the place. Ford, obviously isn't Nick Chubb. Had some explosive runs. He did have a couple of explosive runs, but I believe it was 16% of his carries went for negative yardage. Now, I mean, you can't blame it all on Jerome Ford. The line was banged up, the tackles. You're on your 4th and 5th tackles. But you cannot have that high of a negative run rate. 16%, that's almost 1 in every, say it's 1 in 6. 1 in every 6 runs, you're losing yardage. If you do that on first down, that means you're behind sticks and you're playing catch up. If you're doing it on 3rd and short, you're not getting the first down. So the negative run rate kind of short circuits an offense, and you just can't have that. Number 1 is finding the fits for Deshaun Watson at the skill positions, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think this entire offseason will be about how do you make Deshaun Watson the kind of quarterback that he was when you gave up 3 first-round picks, some other capital. You paid him $230 million guaranteed. You have to find another wide receiver, assuming, and I can't imagine you're not keeping Amari Cooper because you don't have any. There's nothing there in the receiving room that you can count on without Amari Cooper. Elijah Moore, it may be that, the 5 quarterbacks hurt his production, but I was a guy that I loved Elijah Moore. I liked what he did at Ole Miss. I liked him in the draft process. He did not produce the way I thought he would. Cedric Tillman had some rookie pains where you saw late in the season some routes that weren't run properly. Just what you would expect, some growing pains for a young rookie wide receiver. David Bell did make some nice progress late in the season. So again, those are more, if Elijah Moore is my 3rd or 4th wide receiver, I feel a whole lot better. You got to find, be it free agency, draft, you got to find a viable number 2 that does some things that Deshaun Watson likes in a wide receiver to help him unlock his potential. The other thing is Deshaun Watson and David Njoku have to get on the same page. Historically, Watson is a guy who uses his tight end and uses him effectively, and a lot of what was unlocked with David Njoku was through Joe Flacco. So they got to continue to have Njoku be the force that he was late in the year with Flacco. All right, off-season guide for every team that was eliminated from the playoffs during the wild card round. This one from ESPN. Draft outlook for the Browns. With no first-round pick, thanks to the Watson trade, the upstart Browns will look to round 2 to add playmakers at wide receiver and/or linebacker. They'll be drafting in the later 3rd of that round. Could find a playmaker like Washington's Jalen Polk available at wide receiver. And I see all these national prognosticators and publications talking about linebacker. I don't see the Browns really, that's not a position that they put a lot of emphasis on. You've got JOK. I think they're going to find a way to extend him. They're going to keep him. And that really is a playmaker. I think he's going to continue to ascend. We told you earlier in the show, was a Pro Bowler. He was an alternate. Now he's been named to the Pro Bowl. That's not by accident. He's going to continue to thrive, I think, in Jim Schwartz's defense. So I don't necessarily see linebacker as something they do earlier in the draft. They may look at tackle. I mean, you were so banged up at tackle, so an offensive lineman The other thing is, wide receiver and running back. I'm not sure that you can count on, you just can't count on Nick Chubb coming back. Not because of anything Nick Chubb did. He's a 28-year-old running back. It's the second major knee injury. So I would assume, based on the way he hits it and lifts and keeps his body in shape, that he's able to do it. I don't know if you can count on that. And I don't think Jerome Ford is, I think he's more of a complementary piece. So you got to get somebody that can be, the 1A potentially, or the 1B to Nick Chubb when he's healthy. In an ideal world, they had Kareem Hunt, they had Nick Chubb. Can you find that guy? Is it Austin Eckler in free agency? I don't know. It may be a running back that kind of slips down to that latter third of the second round. That might be a guy that they look for is a running back that can help it. Again, you need playmakers. If you're going to have a quarterback of Deshaun Watson's ilk, you got to find a way to support him, give him the playmakers that he needs. He's a different type of quarterback than the Browns have had. Give him the playmakers he needs to be effective. And that's the other thing they're doing. They're going to try to find an offensive coordinator that can help unlock Deshaun Watson as well. All right, before we head to break, Mike Tomlin announced earlier returning to the Steelers as the head coach. That was a couple days ago. That came out. They're talking about a contract extension next year, the final year of his contract. Tomlin also talked about the quarterback situation with the Steelers and Kenny Pickett.
What's your confidence level in Kenny, not just on the field, but everything that comes with being starting quarterback, captain, leader of this team?
I'm extremely confident in him. I feel stronger about some of the intangible things than I did, obviously, when we first started doing business with him, because I have evidence of it. He's highly competitive and professional. He doesn't run from challenges. He runs to challenges. I think that's evident in the way he plays, particularly at the end of close football games. He's got good framework to work with, and for a young guy, he's mature beyond his years. I'm excited about him.
That being said, is he at the point of his career now where some of the improvement has to be tangible, not just?
Certainly, it's a big year for him. We met this morning, and we acknowledged that. It is a huge year for him. But I'm also excited about just watching him wear that component of it, because I know how he's wired and built, and I'm excited about watching him attack it.
Mike Tomlin talking about the quarterback situation and potentially Kenny Pickett being that QB1. First of all, this time of the year, there's no reason for Mike Tomlin to say anything other than that in support of the guy that is on his roster. My fear as a guy who covers the Browns, and I'm sure it's Browns fans' fear as well, is that the Steelers go and get Justin Fields. He develops like a lot of people think he might. Think about the AFC North with quarterbacks Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson. All of a sudden you made a really good division even better. But again, we'll see how that all plays out. Mike Tomlin's not going to talk down the quarterback position, but I would fully expect the Steelers to get an upgrade. And if they get an upgrade at quarterback, they're right in there with the Browns, Bengals, and Ravens, and this becomes even a tougher AFC North division. Going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Lance Reisland joins us. We'll take a look at what went wrong in that Texans playoff game last week. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports 4 CLE. Let's take one last look, even as painful as it may be. Browns, Texans, the video analysis of what went wrong in that AFC wildcard playoff game last Saturday. Let's welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. And Lance, it wasn't pretty. Some recurring things. We'll start right from the get-go. Turnovers. Let's take a look at this first clip, what you see, and some of the things that you think with it.
Well, they had it. It started off. It was just a tough day, and I give more credit to Slowick than I do criticism to Schwartz. I know he had a tough day, but I will be honest with you. Been involved in football my whole life, and sometimes the other guy just has a better plan, and the guys execute. Here's a classic example. So all these issues they had. A lot of it had to come down to injuries, right? And people say, well, injuries aren't an excuse, but there's only a 53-man roster in the NFL, and they really struggled with injuries. So on this first interception, the only thing that I think that Flacco could have done is just kind of eat the ball. It's first down here. But this is the right tackle. Hudson getting beat by Barnett, and it forces a bad throw. He was trying to throw the ball away. He confirmed that he was trying to throw a ball away. Only thing he'd done there is kind of eat the ball and live to fight another day on second down. But this kind of tells you this is the third, fourth tackles. And I think these guys did a great job. Him and Christian, those guys did a great job, but they're back for a reason. And that's what happened. And they faced a good defensive line, and these turnovers killed them. Yeah, I would agree with you. For the most part, the injured guys showed up just fine. They did not. In this game. The very next offensive play, another turnover. Take us through this one. Well, see, this was a really, really cool play. So as this play goes over and over, you're going to see that the Texans do a good job of getting underneath Cooper up top. So Flacco, I think, as a quarterback, I think he's trying to think that he can get that out to Cooper. They do a good job of getting underneath it, switching coverage. Now, I've seen a clip on YouTube. Everybody says that, Amico Ryan's called the play, and basically what happens is it's 4th and 2 here. So, of course, they're going to squat on routes. He works down to Bryant here. If you see Kareem Hunt's going to open over top of the center. You just got to continue his progression. But I think because the fact that they did a good job of getting underneath that route, that's why Ryan said, I think they're gonna try to hit that stick route. So he just doesn't move, doesn't backpedal. He's well coached because it's 4th and 2. He knows the Browns are going to try to squeeze it in there. Again, Flacco, if you had my adjustments here, I think Flacco could work to Hahn here, the third progression. Or maybe they flip the formation and put the formation to the other side so they get a little bit more space in between Cooper and Bryant. But again, really good play by them. This is the game, right? So they had back-to-back interceptions. They're in the game. Throughout the year, 24 touchdown passes, 23 interceptions. You can't do it in the NFL. You can't do it at any level. And that's the biggest thing they got to work on besides getting healthy is protecting football. And I said back-to-back plays. It was back-to-back possessions in that third quarter. All right. The other thing, and you alluded to it, the offensive coordinator, young offensive coordinator who's getting some head coaching interviews this week, he had himself a nice plan. Well, yeah, you look at Slowick did a great job. So, at times everybody I've talked to wants to, kind of Schwartz got handled. And I'll be honest with you, he just didn't have a good night. And it happens in football. And they executed at a high level. Their players played at a high level. He had a good plan of who he's going to attack. He was going to attack the linebackers in man coverage. He was going to attack the safeties in zone coverage. He was going to stay away from Ward and Emerson. He was going to use misdirection because the Browns are so aggressive. But with the defense with Schwartz, you're going to have good plays and you're going to have bad plays. And this defense predicates itself on the offense is going to score points too, because when you play all man coverage and you blitz, you're going to get caught sometimes. And you got to take the good with the bad. In this aggressive style defense, you got to understand that there's times they're going to give up plays, but that's with the assumption that the offense is going to do their part too. And it just didn't happen this week. These guys had a great job. Slowick did a great job, and I give him credit again more than I criticize Schwartz. I think he did some things. I think they should have played more man. We're all sideline coaches at this point, and it is what it is, and they just executed at a higher level. They played better than the Browns. That's what it comes down to. You mentioned Slowick, a great plan. Take a look at this first clip, what you see here. So this is just a boot out of 21 personnel. And, this is either a green dog where, JOK is going to think that he's coming, or he's in man coverages and get caught with his head inside. But again, I think it's a missed coverage by Joku, because if you see him and both Okoronkwo will both come. And they both shouldn't be coming. This is a bare front. So they're going to have 5 down linemen, and he's going to be run on top of the tight end, which tells me he's in man coverage over the tight end. And you can see his head gets caught inside. So for me, this is just a mistake by JOK. But if you watch that game and watch JOK, he played with his hair on absolute fire. It's just like when Myles Garrett jumps off sides and they get some holding penalties by Emerson. This is the style of defense they play: aggressive, in your face, and occasionally you're going to give up a big play. So this didn't cost them the game. They had some mistakes, but this is just a really good plan by Slowick. Again, getting the ball in space, staying away from Ward and Emerson. Really good play here.
Yeah, and the other thing is you saw the pursuit, bad angles that allowed it to go as a touchdown. All right, next play. Again, what'd you see with this, with the Titans offense attacking the Browns defense?
Well, you see, Schultz is going to run. So what they do here is they run a level concept. So if you get from if I showed it from a wider copy, you're going to see that they're going to run the levels concept the Browns constantly run. So you have a upper level, a middle level, and a lower level. So what they do is that they roll and make it look like they're going to run the levels concept, and everybody does except for Schultz. And he's going to sell this route. You can see him sell it to the outside here, and then he's going to stick his right foot in the ground and kind of run that post. It's kind of a stick knot post, everybody calls it, but it's just a really good plan. It's really good. I think the backside safety should be there, but they also do a really good job of running Nico Collins underneath, which brings Thornhill up. And it's hard for Thornhill not to come up because Nico Collins is their primary guy. So again, really good plan. He runs a really good route here on Hickman. Hickman should probably have some help. It's just a really good concept on a down and distance that makes this a very good play. And again, they're staying away from Ward and Emerson and attacking those safeties and using the Browns' aggressiveness against them.
Yeah, the other guy they attacked pretty successfully was Greg Newsome as well, but they didn't attack Emerson and Ward as much. All right, third one on the Texans offense against the Browns defense. What do you see here?
Well, see here, this is interesting. So if you watch this play over and over, you're going to see the right tackle actually messes up. The right tackle is going to set the pass. So this should tell the Browns that it's a pass play. But the Browns are so aggressive, they all go with this toss fake, and Nico Collins is easy. And obviously, Tunsil does a great job. This is what he does. He's a fantastic athlete in space. So he gets out and makes the block on Emerson on the corner. But this really comes down to the Browns' aggressiveness. So you see JOK, you see Taki, you see these guys at the second level fly into that pitch. Well, this is why they've had so many tackles for a loss and things like that, because they're not waiting. They're super aggressive. And again, these things are going to happen when you're in man coverage, especially down in the red zone. It tells me they're not reading a lot, though, because like I said, that front side tackle shows pass, and they still go with the fake. And you see everybody goes with the fake. But that's what this is not a criticism against Schwartz. This is what he teaches. These guys fly with their hair on fire, and that's why they have so many tackles for a loss. Again, this credit goes to Slowick and his, a lot of times they'll just throw the screen out there. This is a credit to him faking that toss and getting everybody going one way.
All right, so let's flip it back momentarily to the offense. Again, Browns were playing with their fourth and fifth tackles. And really, this is the first game where the defense made them look like fourth and fifth tackles. Take us through this clip, what you see here.
So you're going to see Hudson just gets beat here by Grenard on a double swipe. And what ended up happening is that the Texans made the Browns one-dimensional. They didn't have any rushing yards, and they really struggled running the ball, obviously, when Hunt went down, when the tackles went down. Those guys inside did a great job. And I think for the most part, again, it's criticism. Only time offensive linemen get talked about is when they play poorly or have a tough play. I think these tackles, Christian and Hudson and Jones, these guys who came in, they did a wonderful job. In fact, they were way above average most of the year. They ran into a tough scheme and some guys who were playing at a really high level, and the Texans defense is playing at a really high level. But what ends up happening is when you become one-dimensional, these guys can pin their ears back and they don't have to worry about the run. And that's what happened with the Browns in this game. They got behind a little bit in the second half here. They couldn't run the ball against this Texans defense, and then they became one-dimensional, and then it was a mismatch in pass protection. So, again, they got to get these guys healthy. They got to protect the football. Those are two keys. And if they're going to make a run, you got to do it with your best guys. These guys did a great job, but the number one tackles are the number one tackles for a reason.
All right, so when we look forward and kind of trying to get to that next level, making the playoffs, winning the division, advancing in the play, what areas of this roster do you think need upgraded the most?
Well, for me, obviously it's a cliche, right? But they got to stay healthy, and really you saw it with the Browns. So first and foremost, they got to get healthy. Secondly, they have to protect the football. You can't have as many turnovers, regardless of your talent or your lack of talent. But in terms of what you and I have talked about for a couple of years now, they still need a guy, and maybe that happens when Deshaun Watson's healthy for a whole year. I'm not sure, but they still need a guy that they thought Elijah Moore was going to be, a guy who can get him easy yards, a sudden twitchy guy, a Tank Dell guy for the Texans who is going to come on the scene and get you easy yards where you throw a hitch and you get a touchdown, or you throw a simple RPO and he breaks a couple tackles. The Browns still have to be perfect on offense, and that hurts them. If you ask me what the second thing is, they got to figure out what they're doing at tackle with Conklin. Are they going to bump and Wills? Are they going to bump Jones over to the left tackle and then go after a right tackle? Is Conklin healthy? So that's a concern. Those guards inside aren't getting any younger. So they're going to have to start thinking about replacements for them. And then safety-wise, they got to figure out in this scheme, are these safeties what they want? And I think it is. But for me, they still have to find a guy that can be sudden, twitchy, and get some easy yards for them, because they still have to be so perfect on offense. That's tough to do week in and week out.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going. That they need somebody, and you need Amari Cooper because he's your number one. So I'm assuming they'll do what they need to do to make that number work with him. But you need somebody. Again, you've put a real significant investment into Deshaun Watson. Give him playmakers that he can take advantage of. And they may need to look at running back. There's no guarantee. I would assume Nick Chubb's coming back, but I think you probably need a little bit more than you got from Jerome Ford, too.
Well, you look at last year, and Tim Bielek, I did a number of podcasts leading up to the draft with Dan Labby and Tim Bielek. And Tim Bielek was a big fan of A-Chain from out of Texas A&M. And that's a guy who, if you look at what he does for the Dolphins, he plays tailback, but he's a touch guy. So that's kind of what I'm thinking with the Browns. The Browns don't really need a position guy. They need a touch guy, a guy who touches the ball and makes plays. And that could be a guy who can play multiple positions in the slot, outside, inside. But they got to get a guy, they got Njoku now who's, 81 receptions, pushing 1,000 yards during the regular season, almost 900 yards. So they have a big time tight end. I think Harrison Bryant did a good job at tight end. So they have some good tight ends. Nick Chubb, we'll see how he does health-wise. This is all predicated on Deshaun Watson, because Deshaun Watson, one of the things Elijah Moore does well is kind of improvise. And that's not something that, as well as he played, Joe Flacco does. He's by the book, which is why that made that transition so easy for him. But again, until they can get easy yards, and if you look at the Texans game, for example, when they hit those chunk plays, it just made the game a lot easier. And that's something that the Browns have really struggled with the last couple years. They've had some great offenses and they've done some great things, but everything has to be perfect for them to score. And in the NFL, you got to get some cheap ones. You got to get some big plays. You got to create some, some missed tackles, things that, Njoku has done at a pretty high level this year. You could say Njoku was their best guy in space. When he touched the ball, he 7+ yards after catch, which led the tight ends in the NFL. So they got to get a guy like that, but even at a receiver level, a guy who can make a big play when he touches the ball.
Lance Reisland, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland, make sure you check him out. Pages of the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. Always really good video analysis, film breakdown, what the Browns need, what they're looking at. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue straight ahead with Sports4CLE. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. Sports4CLE continues. We turn our attention to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cavs 24-15. They've won 6 straight, 11 of their last 14, and those are without Darius, Garland, and Evan Mobley, who have been injured. Most people probably didn't see that coming. Let's welcome in Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. So, Sam, the big question is, how have they done it?
Yeah, that's a great question. But I don't think a lot of people were expecting it. But, obviously a whole lot of Donovan Mitchell, Jared Allen has really raised his game up. And then you're talking about, the guys on the quote unquote role players on the perimeter, the Karis LeVerts, the Dean Wades, the Sam Merrills, the Isaac Okoros. All those guys have stepped up. And of course, George Niang, who looked like Larry Bird the other night against the Milwaukee Bucks. All those guys have managed to step up, maybe not consistently in scoring, but in other areas they've been very consistent. So, credit to Kobe Altman, the Cavs president, who went out and got, added depth. Of course, I forgot Max Strus in there, who's also been a contributor offseason addition. And credit JB Bickerstaff for giving these guys reason to believe and making sure they've stayed unified. And Cavs have also been defending pretty well, and that's something they do, even obviously with Mobley and Garland, but they've done that very well even without those two.
You mentioned last time out 40-point win over the Bucks. Bucks didn't play Giannis, but still 40. They still have some guys that can play, in Lillard and the likes. So the Cavs now start a 4-game road trip in Atlanta tomorrow night. The last 2 games of that 4-game road trip are against the Bucks again, team that they beat by 40, 135-95 last game out. How important are the next 4? Can that give them any? Are they any more important than the 6-game winning streak that they went on? And again, that 6-game winning streak was against some of the lower level teams, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Well, and the Cavs have done very well this year against teams with losing records. And that's one thing you've got to do. You've got to take care of business against teams that you're supposed to be better than. And they've done that very well this year, against teams with winning records or playoff teams. Not quite as well, but, again, that's where I think the injuries come in to Mobley and Garland is, you don't beat the really good teams without those 2 guys. You can still beat the teams that aren't that great without them. As far as the road trip, this is no joke. The Hawks are, a very up and down team, hot and cold, but when they're hot, and that's where the trip starts. And then you've got Orlando and 2 against Milwaukee. And I think that the Bucks are probably, going to remember last night, even though they didn't have Giannis, they'll remember that beatdown. And you'll be playing it, 2 in a row in their building. So if you're the Cavs, it's not vital that, you build off the 6-game winning streak and get it up to 10 games, but you do want to try to, keep battling, maybe get a win or 2 on this trip. And then, you've got a couple at home, then you go back out on the road. 6 of the next 8 are on the road. So, you've got to get used to the idea now that you're going to be away from home and try to steal a few of these, because right now, if you're the Cavs, you're in a pretty good spot in the East. Same place they were last year, 4th in the Eastern Conference entering the weekend.
So along those lines, currently 4th in the East. Brian Windhorst, NBA national reporter from the area, grew up in this area, on what the Cavs' ceiling is this year. This is from 5 Good Minutes with Windy podcast.
There's a talent gap right now between them and the Bucks, Celtics, and Sixers. But that doesn't mean that they wouldn't have a fighting chance against some of those teams in a playoff setting if they played their absolute max ability. I do think that they are a much deeper team than they were a year ago, and they're proving to be a bit more of a resilient team. You know, when they got into that series against the Knicks, how many guys was JB really able to put out there that he believed in?
6 or 7.
You know, that's how many he played, but how many did he believe in? You know,
3, 4.
Yeah, like, so I think if you look at what's happened this year, like, you know, he didn't believe in Jetty Osman. That was obvious the way he played him. Well, obviously Max Strus is a player to believe in. Karis LeVert is a player to believe in. Sam Merrill is working his way into being a player to believe in. You know, Dean Wade is healthier and a guy that they, that they more and can really help schematically. Like, they are making progress.
Sam, I think that's fair and accurate. The question would be, is there a way they can close the gap? Evan Mobley is a guy, he's one guy you really wanted to be out on the court because he needs time to develop.
Yeah, right. And that's one big way to close the gap is through Evan Mobley's development, as well as obviously, good health for Darius Garland and good health for everybody. I really would like to see this team, and I think that's the hope is, everybody, the majority of your core is healthy when it means the most, when the playoffs get there. But you do need some time together before then, just to get some reps in and get used to playing together again with Garland and Mobley. And, now if you're JB Bickerstaff, you've got a good problem because you got to figure out how to integrate, Sam Merrill into the rotation. His presence really spreads the court because he's become, Cavs spent the offseason looking for outside shooters, and now they found one who was already on the team last year who's really emerged this season, Sam Merrill. And then, as Brian Windhurst said, you've got Karis LeVert, who's reliable, and obviously Allen and Mitchell. So what you need to do is get all these pieces integrated, get them healthy, and then perhaps you can close the gap. I agree with Brian. There is a clear talent gap, and not super obvious, but the Celtics, Bucks, and Sixers, those teams have all kind of quote unquote been there before. The Cavs have not. That said, the Miami Heat made it to the finals last year out of the play-in tournament, so I don't see one real dominant team in the East. I think that the possibilities are endless for the Cavs once the playoffs begin, provided they get healthy and get some, repetitions in and get their rotation set ahead of the playoffs.
So take a look at this. This is the NBA efficiency landscape over the last 10 games. Cavs are 8-2 in their last 10. And what it shows, Cavs are number 1 in net efficiency, number 9 in offense, number 2 in defense over their last 10 games. Again, all of those without 2 of their better players in Garland and Mobley. You can argue 2 of their 3 best players. When you look at that, what jumps out about it? And earlier in the year, when Garland and Mobley weren't there, and it's not a huge sample size, the defense just was not playing well.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that JB Bickerstaff really stressed when he learned that Mobley and Garland were going to miss significant time is we can do this if we do, we can get some wins, we can stay afloat, we can, be in the Eastern Conference race, have home court advantage in the first round, but we're going to have to defend. And we're going to have to get after it a lot more than we have been in the early part of the season. And I think that message was delivered, and it's obviously been, the players have responded because they've, throughout spurts and games, defensively, they've been outstanding, and I think that really speaks to their effort, and the guys who are going to defend are the guys who are going to play a lot. Obviously Sam Merrill, not a great defender, but he makes up for it in other areas. But, even when Max Strus isn't hitting shots, he's going to be in your face a lot. Mitchell's a great player, defender when it comes to getting steals. And obviously Jared Allen protects the rim. The examples are endless. Even Tristan Thompson goes in there and gives them great defense and energy and rebounding. So I think that's been a big reason that they've been able to do what they've done without Garland, who's their second leading scorer, Mobley, who's their third, because they're still putting up a lot of points. The Cavs are, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that, as any coach at any level will tell you, that good defense leads to offense, and that's really what's been going on with the Cavs during this stretch.
Sam Amico from hoopswire.com and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll continue talking Cavs. We'll look forward to what might happen when Darius, Garland, Evan Mobley return. Sports for CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Ugh. Holiday gold! The $20 scratch-off?
It has 100 times multiplier. I could win $1 million.
Psych! I got merry and bright.
No fair.
It has a 200 times multiplier. I could win $2 million!
Game on the back.
Game on the back. Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game.
We continue talking Cavs with Sam Amico from hoopswire.com, Brian Windhorst, national NBA reporter, talking about the Cavs' recent turnaround, this again, from 5 Good Minutes with Windy.
They've gone from being a bottom 7 or 8 offense to being a top 10 offense. When you look at this last 15 or so games, they've been top 5 or 6. And so they are much better equipped to compete with a team like the Bucks now than they were 3-4 weeks ago. The big thing to me is when you look at how it happened, they spread the floor, they take a lot of threes, they really share the ball. It's really remarkable to watch how they really look for each other, and they're really focusing on moving away from the ball. You can tell that they've sort of understood and sort of bred into their thinking that they'll get the ball if they work hard away from it. And that's not something that they were doing regularly over the last year. They had a lot of success using their guards as the initiators, but this team has really learned how to play this way. And I think one of the big reasons is because they've had a consistent lineup for the last month. It hasn't been with the best players they've had on the roster, but they have put out generally the same 7 or 8 guys, and they've had a game plan, they've followed it, and that has enabled them to really unlock a lot of things.
So, Sam, the question becomes, how do you keep the floor spread and incorporate Darius Garland? That's easy to do, but that's not really Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley is a guy that is an inside presence, and who do you think loses minutes? You got to find a way to. About 60 minutes of playing time that are probably going away from guys that have had it the last 10, 15 games.
Yeah, that's, look, it's the question of the season. And the first sign of trouble, I can tell you, social media will blow up. But I think it's going to be, the nice thing is, it doesn't sound like Garland and Mobley are going to come back the exact same game, so you're going to have some time to integrate Garland, who's supposed to be back from his jaw injury first, and then Mobley a little bit after that. So you'll have some time to integrate these guys again slowly. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. It's not like they're new to the team or the franchise or any of that. These are guys who have done this before. They played together in the playoffs last season. So yeah, it's going to take a little bit of a rotation tweak, and I don't want to predict who might lose minutes, but you think and figure that usually the rotation's eight guys, maybe not a 9th guy gets 10 minutes or so, but it's as you get geared up for the playoffs, you're really whittled down to 7-8 guys. Obviously. It's really going to depend on, the Cavs are a heavy analytics team, as most NBA teams are. It's really going to depend on what the analytics and data shows, who should be out there and all that. But obviously, you're going to have your starting 5 who you're going to have Karis LeVert, you're going to have Isaac Okoro. I'm assuming you're going to have Dean Wade. So that leaves, Sam Merrill and Tristan Thompson probably on the outside looking in a little bit.
Yeah, and Merrill is a guy that I believe he's over 50% from three-point range, and that's kind of tied to the success they've had. So there's how do you swing that?
Yeah, you have to. I think you have to keep him in the rotation again, even when he's not shooting. Just his presence is creating a lot of opportunities for everybody else. So I'm sure that's something that, if we see it, the Cavaliers certainly see it. So I'm sure that's going to be something to consider, is that Merrill remains in the rotation when everybody's healthy. So
the other guy, and you alluded to it a little bit last segment, Jarrett Allen playing really well. Recorded 10th straight double-double Wednesday against the Bucks. 21 points, 13 rebounds. Boy, he struggled at the beginning of the year. It's really good to see him back to what you kind of expect him to be.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's coming off that injury at the start of the season, kind of got, going, like you mentioned, a little bit slowly, wasn't putting up, really didn't seem to be making much of an impact. The great thing about Jarrett Allen, and here's why I think that the Cavs are going to be just fine when Garland and Mobley come back, is Jarrett Allen's got 10 straight double-doubles without being a guy who demands or even cares if he gets the ball. I mean, he's doing all this off hustle plays, and when he does get the ball, he makes the most of it. He shoots a very high percentage. He forces nothing. There's never a time when Jarrett Allen gets the ball and you think, wow, that was, he shouldn't have forced that shot up, or he was looking just to score there. There's never a time when that happens. He's a very unselfish player, and yet he manages to get, we saw against the Bucks, 21 points, 13 rebounds or whatever. None of that is forced. It all comes within the flow of the game. And it's really been it's been nice to see, for his sake and for the Cavs' sake, him be able to put up those stats. But he's not a stats guy, so he makes his impact in so many other ways. But yeah, he's really, the last 2-3 weeks, he's looked like an NBA All-Star.
So you mentioned shooting the ball well from the field, and you also mentioned this guy against the Bucks. Wednesday, Georges Niang, career-high 33 points, tied Cavs' single-game record for highest field goal percentage, 13 or more attempts. He was 13 of 14. The other two guys that did it, centers. So you got Brad Daugherty, 13 of 14 against Sacramento in '92, and then Elmore Smith from my childhood was 13 of 14 in 1977 against Atlanta. Niang is a guy that he's another guy. He's physical. He can score. He can shoot threes if you leave him open. It's been a nice addition.
Yeah, just by the energy that he offers. He is always very positive, very on fire in terms of his personality. And he really is, the other guys love having him around. So when he has a game where, he's in the same sentence as Brad Daugherty, that's just icing on the cake. So, what Niang offers is not going to be lethal outside shooting or great inside play or any of that, but he offers consistently energy, hustle, fight, lifting his team spirits, and going out and playing, just so hard. There's never a question that Georges Niang never takes off a play. Throughout 82 games, you're not going to see him, we're up 20, I'm going to take this play off. He's never that guy. So I think he's been a real nice addition. He's not going to be a huge numbers guy. He's going to frustrate fans. I knew he frustrated fans in Philadelphia because he's kind of up and down when it comes to numbers, which I think the Cavs are just fine with that because they have plenty of scorers and they have plenty of guys who can do a lot of things that he can't. But the one thing that he offers is just always he's leading out there by example with his effort. And, he's a very humble guy, but he's also very, very outspoken in a very positive way. And the Cavs really needed that. He's really a guy who's going to fight to the finish. So the fact that he's in the sentence with Brad Daugherty and like you said, Elmore Smith, who has a wonderful barbecue restaurant now at the at the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. I think that's great news for George Niang.
All right, before I let you go, Pacers made a trade for Pascal Siakam this past week. Trade deadline coming up less than a month. Do you see the Cavs making any type of move? If so, what do they try to add?
Yeah, they're on the lookout, as I think probably many teams are, but the Cavs are very clearly making some noise as a team that's looking for the old 3-and-D type, which means a guy who can hit three-pointers and defend wings. Now that's a very, obviously a very prized type of player in the NBA. They're not easy to get. I do think that the Cavs have been, active in calling teams because there's plenty of those type of guys available. Interestingly, the Andrew Wiggins of the world, DeAndre Hunter of the Hawks is supposedly available. I know the Cavs have had their eye on Royce O'Neal. The Nets have a number of wings that the Cavs are looking into. The one thing that I know that the Cavs are going to consider, though, and Royce O'Neal, by the way, is obviously probably Donovan Mitchell's best friend in the NBA. So that probably plays a role too. But the one thing the Cavs are going to consider is, do we want to mess with, what's working pretty well for a guy who may or may not move the needle a whole lot? I mean, you're going to have to give up something to get these players. You're going to have to take on some salary for some of the players that I mentioned. Do they move the needle enough for all that? Probably not. So, I don't foresee the Cavs making a trade. If they do, it'd be very low level, I think, unless they can just get an absolute steal. So I wouldn't count on it if I'm the fans, only because things are working right now. You're going to plan on trying to get to the next level with the guys that you have. And I think if you mess with that too much, that can backfire on you. Look at the Denver Nuggets last year. Continuity with just a few small changes around their main core. I think that's the way the Cavs want to and will probably approach things this year at the trade deadline.
Sam Amico, hoopswire.com, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Sam.
All right. Thanks for having me, Dave. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Sam Amico, make sure you check out hoopswire.com. Always really good NBA coverage, especially on the Cavs. That is who Sam writes for. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.